Hey, what's going on? We are live for a special Monday episode of the Big Go Belt podcast. I am your guy, T. James. I'm here with Mr. Jamal. What's up, dude?
Hello. I'm good.
Good. Before we get into the show real quick, as it has been a couple of busy weeks, just want to cap off things you've seen real quick. You can show them out to us, movies.
Well, I can tell you what not to see. You do not need to waste your money on a skyscraper with The Rock and a building, the Tower in Inferno that wasn't. You do not need to waste your money on Hotel Transylvania 3, unless the kids really like Part 1 and 2. There's really kind of nothing out this weekend for like another 2 or 3 weeks until Mission Impossible comes. No, yeah, Mission Impossible comes out 27th, so that'll be the next big thing. But it's kind of like a lull right now. So those are the 2 big movies of the week, and they're kind of meh.
I think there's been a lot of like questionable things out. A lot of things that had potential, but nonetheless, probably didn't live up to it or not. Equalizer came out, and there's been mixed reviews on that as well too. But I don't know if it's out yet, but we've seen it already.
Equalizer comes out Friday. It's okay. Not enough equalizing, to be honest with you, and that's it's a bit of a problem. It's a decent movie.
Yeah.
It's just that it's not based on the show anymore. It's just Man on Fire, but Denzel is on.
It's Denzel again. It's all Denzel. Anywho, it's Monday, and this is not a typically scheduled show. So for some Monday, it's got to be a special show. We are here with 2 special guests. Now, this is a funny one because typically I would say you may have seen these people, but you may not have seen these people, but you damn sure have heard these people. They are the voice of Nova Pro Wrestling, which you can hear them on any of the video on demand services, DVDs, or exclusively live on Paramount.tv. We are joined by K Ford, Kevin Ford, and Jason Heat. What's up, fellas?
Your hero is here.
I'm feeling very special. Thanks for having me.
No doubt. Now, just this is going to be unique because a lot of people, I think they get an idea what commentary is, and you guys have obviously been in the game for a while, very well professional. I literally enjoy sitting next to you guys doing the shows because of the energy you bring. Jason joined me for the pre-show last 2 weeks ago for Nova Pro, which was amazing. You guys are natural, so I've been wanting to schedule this for a while. We talked it up at ROH and said, look, we need to make this happen now, and here we are.
Man of action.
That's right. I mean, I'm excited. So we definitely have a unique plethora of questions coming from the 2 of us. So cool. Let's try to jump into your brain, and then at the end, we'll talk a little bit about Nova Pro's next upcoming show, which will be Harlem Nights, which is a unique show on its own too. So that's what's on schedule for today. But I'll let Jamal get started because Jamal definitely seems like he has some questions that I'm even intrigued what he has to ask.
Yep. So you guys do the commentary for Nova Pro Wrestling, and a good job, of course, at that. But I guess my first question is about commentary itself. How do you keep your stamina up throughout a show? Nova Pro has 96 matches. The shows are 3.5 days long. So I know it's important to watch, the matching and get a feel for it and become invested in it. But how do you keep it up when it's 2:30 in the morning and the bar's about to close and we haven't we just hit intermission?
Well, so I consider myself the lead commentator. I've done every single Nova event from the debut up until American Slang, our latest show. And I've been fortunate to work with several of our commentator partners, so we're now at the point where our booth is 4 people deep. So it's not just myself and Jason Heat, but Innocent Isaiah, who was inactive indefinitely from an injury he sustained back at Nova Project 3. Wanted to come back, be part of the Nova Pro family, and he wanted to be on commentary. And then with Nova Pro actively recruiting some of the best women's wrestlers in independent wrestling, we felt it was very important to have somebody who was incredibly knowledgeable about women's wrestling all around the world. And we have a partnership with Squared Circle Sirens, which I have to say is hands down the best women's wrestling website on the internet.
No doubt.
We were able to get Dennis Kerwin to come and be a commentator for that. So what I do as the lead commentator is I look at the matches we have and I assign the matches for everybody to play to their strengths. So in that way, not everybody is on every single match for the whole show. So people get breaks. People get matches in which they have more expertise. So it benefits both in that way. So because you're taking natural breaks, you're able to catch your breath, get a drink of water, rest your voice, go get something to eat, and get that stamina back up. It can be hard though. I think the main event of the last show was going on at 11:15 p.m. But I mean, it is, I think, really just taking breaks and having that 4-person booth makes it actually much easier than you might think to keep your stamina. Like for the Commonwealth Cup weekend, when we had 3 shows, I just took the entire women's show off because I knew it was in good hands with Dennis and Jason and Isaiah, because I called the entirety of the Friday evening show and the entirety of the Saturday evening show. So I rested my voice in that way. So it's just being mindful and thinking ahead of those assignments is the best way that we keep our stamina, I think.
I'd also say for me, it's one of those things where it's funny, my 1-year anniversary with Nova Pro is actually coming up in just a couple months, which is really exciting. And my sort of 1.5 to 2 year doing commentary in general. And so the novelty, and I don't mean novelty in a diminutive way, I mean in sort of like the pure joy that I get doing this. It's by far right now the most, my favorite thing that I do in life right now is calling these matches. So whatever time it is, it hasn't gotten to the place where it feels like anything other than like a gift and an opportunity to get to do it. And obviously every match in terms of quality is subjective, but the more invested the performers are, the more exciting the matches, the more exciting you get into it, and the more at stake. So with the matches higher up the card, there's usually more stake, more investment. So it actually gets sometimes progressively easier to call the matches, because by the time you're at the main event, you have all of these confluence of events that have gotten you to that point, and there's so much emotional investment from the crowd and from us and from the wrestlers going at it in the ring. It's hard not to just stay really invested as the night goes on.
Well, I guess then how do you measure yourself then? Mauro Ranallo, one of the things that I don't like about his commentary style is that he becomes too invested and he just stops talking and he just starts screaming. And I get it. It's the immersion. It's the fandom. You see somebody do something cool. But how do you measure yourself where you become, still a commentator and you have to keep that commentary running versus do you believe what the hell you just saw?
You want to tackle this one first? Or you want me to?
Go for it.
I think that's something that I'm still evaluating. I am constantly listening back to my work as a commentator. Kevin can tell you, especially at the beginning and still now, I'm always trying to seek feedback from other people, not just on an ego level, but like after a show on Powerbomb, I'm going to read every single hashtag, whatever the hashtag of the show is, top to bottom, to see feedback on the overall show and particularly on our work to really get a sense of it. I know that I think that I've done the best work when I feel like it's been really natural, when the chemistry has been really present. We're always really good, I think, at focusing on what the guys and girls in the ring are doing and really adding to that. So when we feel natural and like real people, that's the time that I think it's actually best, because I think we both, particularly this team, comes in with a sense of professionalism and it comes in with a sense of knowledge, and there's a lot of fundamentals that we have. So whenever I really feel like we're actually having a conversation, when we're really providing genuine insight, when we have a perspective and it feels very natural and that chemistry is there, that's when I feel really good. And the times that I feel the most not happy with my performance is when I don't know what perspective I have on the action for any reason, or when I feel like I've slipped into sort of like announcer cliches because I've heard so many things before, because we want to be our own individual identities and we want to use that in service of really getting across not only the stories, but the strategies and what makes every single wrestler unique. And I think for me, that usually comes from a psychological perspective. My background is in theater and a lot of episodic storytelling, and I tend to really think about the idea of why and what somebody has gotten into this business for and what their individual goals are. And I think, like Kevin was saying, we each have our own strengths that we bring in. And it's really about trying to play to your commentary partner as well. The version of me is slightly different with Kevin than it is with Dennis, because if I was just doing the exact same thing, I'd be ignoring what they bring to the table and what I need to bring to match them.
Yeah, I think the one thing to keep in mind is while we are at a wrestling show and we're having a lot of fun, it is still a job. So in a way, there's just a different mind frame I have watching a Nova show at that table with the microphone. I'm very conscious that there is a microphone in front of me, and I try to, if something's exciting, I'm not going to try to understate it, but I understand there is that line where someone's excitement can borderline be annoying or even come off at worst as inauthentic. And I think that's something you really try to avoid. But again, it's just a different mindset. It's like, you go to work, you're in a mindset, you come home, it's a totally different mindset. You're a little more relaxed. So again, it's just that mindfulness you need to have as a commentator to sort of reel it in a little bit. Even if you see something that's really exciting, play up the excitement, but not too much, because you still are an authority on the match. But that isn't to say when a match is over, me and Jason will look at each other and be like, that was ridiculous, or that was awesome. PCO and Eric Royal comes to mind for that. When I think of matches where he and I just look at each other afterwards and we're like, holy crap, that was so awesome. So yeah, I mean, we could do it with each other when the mics are off or the match is over or whatever else. It's just straight up being a professional. And as as far as the Mauro Ranallo comment goes, I don't necessarily disagree, but there is something where you watch enough commentary and you figure out what your style is or what you like and what you don't like, and you not only take feedback on what people are saying about you online, but what people are trying to say about other commentators and tailoring your own style and kind of being mindful about that as well. Because it's not just him. People complain about Jim Ross and Josh Barnett on New Japan on Access. People complain about Joey Styles and his thing. So I do try to kind of take all that feedback about people like about commentary, what they dislike, and also just what I like about commentary and don't like about it, and sort of tailor my style to that.
I think it's also about, I love the word authentic. I think that that authenticity is absolutely that energy. And I also think a lot of it's about situational appropriateness, being able to read what's happening and the vibe of stuff in the ring, when it's appropriate to be making jokes and being funny, when it's not appropriate to do so. It would have been easy to some extent at the last show. A giant game of dodgeball broke out effectively at the end of the show. That could have been something that we sold as being humorous. There were potentially jokes to be made there, but it wasn't. That was after Wheeler Yuta got absolutely decimated by Homicide. Homicide was going totally off the rails. And I think that hopefully what we were successful at doing was showing how this was not the way this night was supposed to go, how violent and unexpected it got, and get people wanting to see what happened next. Kevin providing that sort of voice of that authority, trying to keep people informed, and me sort of being the emotional perspective on the fact that this is unacceptable and what this person is doing. And I really do think a big part of it is recognizing that we want to get multiple different perspectives and sort of narratives across, and being able to, between us, figure out who's handling what angle of the emotional content that we're kind of delivering.
Right. So you guys are the bridge between the in-ring content and the and the listener, the viewer, as it were. But how do you, if there is something that's happening in the ring, and it is an angle that it needs to be portrayed in a particular way for storyline purposes, though the specifics of what's happening in the ring may conflict with your personal beliefs, how do you get over that? Like, how do you make sense of a situation where this is something that the outside of work you would react differently to the inside of work you? For example, intergender wrestling is a polarizing topic, and though I personally love it, that's something that I would champion on the if I were a commentator. Whereas somebody would say, "Oh my God, he just brutalized that woman." So I mean, so like, how do you get out of yourself to keep the storylines progressed, even though it may be something that you personally don't agree with or do agree with, but it conflicts with the storyline?
Again, I guess it's just reading the situation. Again, I'm not doing commentary for myself. So what I feel about something and what my personal beliefs are don't matter whatsoever. I'm playing to the audience of the Kings who own Nova Pro, and I'm playing to the audience at home. That is who I am there to serve. It is not about me. If there was a commentator who, for example, was against intergender wrestling, or maybe even deathmatch wrestling, or some sort of style that they don't have a care for, I just wouldn't put them on the match. And I think they would be happy to not be on that match as well. That's really, I mean, I know that's the simplest answer I can give, but I feel like that comes with the job. You're going to have these type of matches where maybe you don't think a wrestler is very good, or maybe you're just not a fan of their work, but they're there, and it is your responsibility to be a professional and make the match the best it can and add the flavor to the match that you can. I think you really have to work to put your personal beliefs aside. If you are a fan of the work and all that, absolutely play into that. Don't be afraid to add that excitement level of it. But if there is something that conflicts with your interest, quite truthfully, you probably should not be doing commentary if that's something that you cannot reconcile.
Well, I mean, I guess my question is, it's not necessarily about it is you, because you are the person that we're listening to. And unless it's a 100% charade where you are completely devoid of or separate from the in-ring, on commentary, on-air personality and the outside personality, I think it is a bit of your actual persona as you, Kevin Ford, that we are attracted to in the first place. So with that said, and again, intergender wrestling or death matches or something like that is an extreme. But if it is an incident where Angela Slane versus Keith Lee comes to mind, where I'm sitting in the audience and the guy, looks at me and says, "I don't know if I can stay for this." Now, that's not something that obviously within the context of the storyline, it is what it is. And personally, it's my favorite match of all time in Nova Pro. But is that something that, per the storyline, that you have to say, like, something that you should be a face winning or a heel winning? You got, well, no, the dude was right. Like, how do you, when you're supposed to put someone over, but you can't do it because they're actually technically wrong? Is that something that organically happens, or is it something, or you just have to just push through it and until the, for lack of a better expression, until the company line?
I think that as a couple different things. I mean, I think first off, one of the best creative challenges of the job and what makes it fun is to be able to find a way to have a perspective that you believe in, and also always be putting the match and the talent over. I don't think that Nova Pro wants any of us out there to not bring ourselves to the match, but it's not putting ourselves over at the expense of what the story that's being told in the ring is. And that's what our job is. And I think that's part of you actually doing the work in your head. If there is ever something that you're not as into, coming up with reasons to get into it, doing the job of actually selling what is happening and why it's happening, and creating that and reading the story that's being told and helping to provide that analysis oftentimes helps get you to do the buy-in, because you have to be in it in order for it to work. I also think in the case of Nova Pro in particular, one of the things I love about professional wrestling that I think has become more and more apparent as different companies rise to the forefront is that there's different flavors of wrestling. I know for me personally, I came to Nova Pro shows before I ever got on commentary. I like what they do a lot. I might like certain matches more or less, or stories or whatever, but as an overall show, I genuinely like the product a lot. It fits me. I don't know that I would have sought out a company if I felt it was more often than not doing something that I didn't agree with. I wouldn't be the right fit for it. And I think that we've built up a roster of people who really believe and care and buy into what the mission and aesthetic of this particular brand of wrestling is. And so it's actually very easy to support it. And as Kevin said, a job's a job. You do your job to the best of your ability, and you do stuff sometimes that maybe isn't exactly your cup of tea, but I don't know that we'd be here investing in ourselves if we didn't believe in this product. So it's not something I've actually really personally encountered a lot here. Well,
great. I mean, that's what you want. And I guess that makes it easier to sell something that you believe in. Luckily that hasn't happened yet. So then what is the hardest part of doing commentary for Nova Pro? Is it just the moving parts? Is it the staying up with the matches, the personal stamina? What makes the hardest part of Nova Pro commentary?
That's an interesting question.
Thank you.
Jason, does anything come to mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think that two things. Sometimes when there's people who are making a first appearance on the show, particularly in the pre-show, that we don't necessarily know or have the time to do as much research as we want, because we want to give the best expert perspective possible on everybody who makes and does their work in the ring. I think that sometimes that's more challenging, and I think that mainly only happens in terms of pre-show stuff, but we've started, I think, to develop the chemistry to just be able to figure out the story that they're doing and what we need to know. And I think that it's the counterpoint to what Kevin said in terms of all of us getting breaks, constantly switching who you're working with and taking time off in the matches. Sometimes you get into a rhythm with somebody and you get into a good flow and then shift it off. I don't think that that is a big enough minus to mitigate the pluses, and Kevin does a great job in terms of figuring out how to balance the commentary both for us and for the audience. But I do think that, you know, shifting to work with 3 different people in one night, getting in on this match, getting off, that's probably the hardest thing for me, instead of just like getting in a roll and a groove and being able to let momentum carry.
Yeah, I think for me, I think the toughest thing is reconciling how much information to give the audience, because what I want to do is I want to add context to the match, and hopefully with context adds a level of care to the match, because again, I'm a fan. I am watching a 10-match card. What differentiates these matches from each other? Who are these people? Why should I care? So it's hard. I want to give information and context to the match, but I don't want to overburden somebody with it, because our audience, especially being on powerbomb.tv, is so different now, because you're going to get people who have been with us in show 1. You're going to get people where whatever show they're watching is their very first one that they're watching, from somewhere in between. So how much information should I give them where I don't feel like I'm maybe patronizing people who've been with us for forever, but I'm not giving enough to the new people, or am I overburdening them with information and just too much where really I should just be getting down to brass tacks and giving them, hey, these 2 dudes hate each other, now they're fighting. Great, that's all I really need to know. So sometimes that can be hard too, and I think there are some times too where you get in a rhythm of just calling moves and stuff, which is fine to a degree, but you know, wrestling is a visual medium. I can see what they're doing, so you don't want to get too caught up in that kind of stuff. So sometimes I guess that's just overthinking at certain points, and you know, I think in anything like this, sometimes you listen back and you're like, oh, you just, you know, cringe listening to yourself. Oh, I should have said this, or I should have done that. But you know, you do it live. It's done. It's in the past. You gotta try to get out of your head and do better the next time. But you know, we're all critical of ourselves. We're creators in a sense. That's what we do.
Yeah. Of course. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add something to the end of that about maybe the amount of information that you provide. I always wonder, when do you kind of draw the lines about speaking about, especially independent wrestling, especially when do you draw the lines about speaking about another promotions and that current wrestler within Nova Pro, their storylines and their accolades in other promotions, vice versa, why they're here at Nova Pro?
That's a very good question, and that is something that I actually find as a fan, I made a switch on myself mentally. I used to think it was a good thing for companies to mention a lot of outside championships and accomplishments. And then I realized I did not like that at all. Because one, you really want to put the focus on what you are doing as a company. That is paramount as a commentator to what you're doing. It's a little different now that we're in a stage where we're on a platform where the nature of it is so many promotions being there. And so I don't mind mentioning something to bolster Powerbomb.tv as a whole. You know, Powerbomb TV is a family of promotions, and that's what we're trying to do. But, you know, I remember this is about a decade ago, and I'm going somewhere with this, where Chris Hero was a babyface in PWG, and he was a heel literally everywhere else he wrestled. And somebody, I remember online making a complaint about that. Not necessarily a complaint, but just, isn't it sort of strange to see Hero be a heel in Ring of Honor, CZW, everywhere else, and then watch PWG where he's a babyface? And somebody said, PWG should not concern themselves with what everyone else is doing. They should concern themselves with what they're doing to put out the best story possible. So obviously there's instances where we use a lot of outside championships, like Nick Aldis with the NWA championship, or David Starr and Tim Donst having the WXW Shotgun Championship and the AIW Absolute Championship, respectively, coming in. So in that case, it helps. And I do think when somebody debuts, it might give a little context to their character or give them a little background. But I do think it is something to be aware of and try to make sure you're not paying too much attention outside of what's going on in your own universe, especially for a character that's been around for so long.
Yeah, unsurprising to everybody here probably, but I'm a huge comic book fan. I've been deeply invested in comic book universes and theory behind them for a long time, and I think wrestling in a lot of ways is one of the most parallel art forms, particularly as a performance art, to some of the way that comic book universes are structured. And I think a lot about the term continuity when it comes to this. And what continuity really means is the series of events that have happened that you know that help to provide the context for who these people are in the story structure. And oftentimes when I think things get really rough with all these mentions and things like that, it's where you're, like Kevin said, you're overburdening people with excess continuity beyond the story that you need to tell and what you need to know. When I meet you, I learn through the course of actually interacting with you all of the information about you that I need at that given moment in order to process what our story is together. And that doesn't mean I need to know what your sister ate for breakfast 5 years ago. Other people might need that information. I think when it comes to other promotions, it's a decision about, are these plot points going to help enhance this particular story and this particular encounter? Is it going to give context that explains why this match is so much more vicious between these two people than we're used to seeing this person have? If it is, then great. That helps provide an extra layer of story and depth that people can get into. But just for the sake of statistics and just for the sake of throwing more information at people, then it becomes confusing. The way I think of it is that every decision that we make, even though we're live, needs to be intentional, because everything that we say is being listened to equally. So the information that we have to choose to provide is all going to be taken as part of this experience and equal weight to the story. So everything that we do and say wants to provide the best narrative experience possible for the people watching this match.
No, that's kind of what it needs to be. Are there any favorites, past or present, in the commentary field? Anybody that you've taken notes from? Hopefully not Michael Cole. That kind of not necessarily that you model your career or your style after, but somebody that you've just taken notes from.
Sure. I will say two different things. One, the former Rich Piccini, who does stuff with MLW right now. When I was very first getting into commentary, I actually went to Orlando for WrestleMania, not to go to WrestleMania, but I took a creative seminar on booking for professional wrestling with Gabe Sapolsky, because that's another area that I do at other promotions. And at the time, I hadn't seen any kind of seminars like that, and it was a really great opportunity. While I was just wandering around Joey Janela's spring break, I ended up wandering into Rich. He had just recently been fired from WWE. He was super friendly and gave me his phone number, and I called him a couple weeks later to just ask, because I hadn't broken into commentary yet. And he was just, for a dude he met randomly walking around the floor of a wrestling show, he spent 2 hours on the phone with me just going over basics and fundamentals, what he had learned at NXT and learned with WWE. And for a basic foundation, especially dumping into it with the company I was working with previously, Fight Pro Wrestling, and having never done it before, that was such an incredibly huge gift for him to give someone, just to take the time to really explain his perspective. And then in terms of people in the field that I'm a huge fan of, I love listening to Don Callis. I can directly measure my enjoyment of a New Japan show based on whether or not it's the main announced team versus a secondary announced team. And I literally will listen to that show or watch all the way through instead of skipping the specific matches if it's Don Callis and Kevin Kelly in particular. And if it's not, I might skip to just watch the performers I'm most into, as opposed to those main event tags. For whatever reason, he blends an attitude and a character and a knowledge with a real passion for certain moments, and their dynamic. I've really grown to appreciate that team in particular, and I've found that I want to listen when he talks. And so I care what he has to say. So then he has a certain level of cachet he can bring to performers and make me invest in them more when he cares about them.
Yeah, I feel the same way about Nigel McGuinness with Kevin Kelly. Back when they were doing a thing for Ring of Honor. Kevin?
Yeah, when I first started watching indie wrestling, I was really into Ring of Honor, and I thought Dave Prazak and Lenny Leonard were a really excellent team together. And Prazak's been in wrestling in the Midwest for probably 2 decades now, so he brought a great knowledge base. And Lenny Leonard is someone who I still admire and enjoy listening to. And I give him so much credit for calling every Evolve show. Maybe not anymore because I think he has Ron Yemi doing it with it, but he did so many of those shows alone. And I can't fathom doing commentary by myself. It is so much easier having a partner to play off of, or just give you a moment to take a drink of water or take a breath. So anybody who can do it alone just gets so much respect from me. Personally, I think Joe Sposto, who used to be Leonard F. Jacarson in Chikara, is one of the best commentators going today. He's somebody who I think you can put him in there with any partner out there. He'll play to that person's strength, and I think he does an amazing balance in telling a backstory, and also not just giving you a backstory, but also paying attention to what's going on in the match, not getting too caught up in the details and calling it straight. And there's so many other people in Chikara I think are great. Like Mike Quackenbush is really good at giving you not just what's going on in the ring, but a lot of the history of the moves and also why these particular wrestlers are doing these moves. So it kind of gives you not just a background to why this person has chosen to do this move, but how they learned it, their training and all that stuff. And as a head trainer, that stuff's very important to him. And yeah, I mean, as far as the people on the indies go, that's kind of where it comes from. You kind of listen to everybody, though, like there's some things about Corey Graves I think are very good. I found him very fun to listen to on NXT, and I think he adds a uniqueness to the Raw and SmackDown. I mean, there's a reason he's on both of the biggest shows in WWE right now. And of course, you go back to people like Jim Ross and Lance Russell and those guys. It's so much fun going back and listening to them and kind of aping a little bit of their style and seeing why people like them so much, why people remember them so fondly. And just the thing that I always take away is they always make it so you believe what they're saying. You never think that they're full of it or feeding you lies. They have something in them that makes you believe what they are saying. And I think that is of the utmost importance as a commentator.
No, absolutely. My Japanese is terrible, but I would love to listen to Funaki call a WWE pay-per-view. I've not been able to have that pleasure yet, but that's got to be a lot of fun. So I want to pull back.
And I wanted to add in there too. I mean, I think me and Jamal kind of agree on this, but I think my all-star crew was always and will always be Bobby the Brain Heenan and Tony Schiavone. I think it has a lot to do why I was on whatever channel WCW was on back in the day over WWF at the time. And it's also cool to hear him back on MLW. Like when I have a Friday to sit down while I watch replays on YouTube easily.
Yeah, I was a WWF kid, so Heenan and Monsoon is my number one all-time commentary team. I'll tell you what, though, I think Randy Savage is an incredibly underrated commentator.
I actually can get with you on that one. I really can.
I don't always love Vince McMahon on commentary, but him, Roddy Piper, and Randy Savage was an incredibly fun team.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jamal.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I want to pull back the curtain a little bit and talk about more of the creative process or lack thereof. Are you guys, other than getting the lineup card, do you guys have any other insight into what the matches are going to be, how they're going to play out, any cues to something, or are you just surprised as everyone else when something happens?
Sometimes.
Okay.
I know there's some commentators who are like, I want to know as little as possible and go in there and just call what I see, which I 100% get in terms of you want your emotional reaction to be what it is. But I do think there are some questions that you want to ask the match that you're calling in order to do the best job possible. Especially, there's something where I call it mission critical. is there something in this match that I absolutely need to be sure that I need to call? Maybe it's an interference thing. Maybe it's someone cheating. Maybe it's some other big thing that they want to do as a false finish. What is something that you absolutely want to make sure that I'm going to be able to call for you and make sure the fans have pointed out? And sometimes the wrestlers will pull me aside and say, hey, this is something I'm trying to do. This is a new move I'm adding to my repertoire. It's called this. Please make sure to mention that. There's plenty of times the wrestlers will come to one of us and say, hey, who's calling this match? Okay, XYZ. Here's something I need. So I do think it's part of the responsibility of, I think we both come in with notes. We talk as a commentary team before the show to make sure we're all on the same page and we know what we're kind of doing. And we have our own stories that we want to tell. But I do think there is some responsibility to go to the wrestlers or even the wrestlers to come to you if there really is something that they need you, that they want to, or trying to get over or that they're just trying out, that they're trying to establish to come to you and mention. So there is definitely a little bit of work that goes into that. And you also want to know the way you want to direct the match. Like you want, if you're about to get to the peak, you want to also commentate along those lines. So I think you need to have some knowledge of each of the match before going in.
Yeah, my experience in Nova Pro is also very different. So the main commentary work that I've done has been with Nova Pro and with a promotion called Fight Pro Wrestling, and it's sort of offshoot Fury Pro Wrestling. And specifically with Fight Pro Wrestling, I was booking that show. We were doing a weekly episodic television show that went for about 26 weeks total. And so it was learning on the job, both in terms of doing the commentary, but also in terms of booking the show, producing the talent, coming up with the backstage promos and stuff like that. So doing commentary from that perspective isn't necessarily very different, but it is a different perspective. I'm the one who's put all this together. It's actually about trying not to give too much away and making sure that you're guiding in the right way, but with all that knowledge not being inauthentic. And that was also done in post-production, so it's very different than doing it live when you're watching it back on the screen. In Nova Pro, I think we get just the right amount of information, the most part, so that we are not going to be caught off guard in a way that will leave the audience confused or lost, or that we will be completely unprepared. But at the same time, especially for me, because I think Kevin gets a little bit more information than hands information off to us, there is a freedom to be a little bit more spontaneous and to know, in particular, Kevin is the anchor. I can go to him, I can ask questions and be like, hey, is this something we can mention or something that we can't? And it's just as often he's like, nope, cut that, don't do it. And I think that that's a trust that we're building where he knows I'm going to come in with a lot of creativity, but I'm not going to bust something out that's really big or weird without talking to him first. And there's been times that he's been like, no, don't do that. And there's times that he's been like, yeah, that's fine, go for it. And the more I do it, the more I get a sense of where things are going naturally and what kind of stories we tell and what our flavor is, the more I don't need as much specific information because I'm now getting into the rhythm and the lifeblood of this particular promotion and the way that we work. So I think it really is about trying to find a balance between having the points along the journey, but I don't need to know how we're going to get there. I want to see that in the ring just like everybody else does.
There's also things, too, that I will go to Mike or somebody on the Nova Pro staff if I have a question. And it could be something as silly as, hey, do I call this guy Chris or Christopher? I want to make sure there's a consistency amongst there that between all of us as commentators, you're going to get the same story. You're going to get the same narrative from all of us. So there is, because even just little things like that can cause a disconnect. And so if there's anything I have a question on or something I want to be sure of, I'm not afraid to go to him and say, hey, this is a story that I kind of have in mind for this match. I talked to them and it's kind of what they're telling. But given what might be coming up in September, October, is it okay for me to say this sort of stuff? Or is this going to be going against what we are aiming for in the future there? So that's also, I think, there are responsibilities as commentators is to recognize when we have to ask those sort of questions, not just to the wrestlers themselves, but the person who's putting the show together.
Right on.
So let me ask you this then. When you're watching a match outside of ones that you're commentating, does your perspective change on the match because of the commentary, be it good or bad? Are you listening for things now instead of? How does it change your wrestling experience as you are now? In the lead commentator.
it definitely makes me more aware of the commentary, and it definitely gives me an appreciation for what they're doing. But I also listen to it just again to kind of pick up things that I like and things that I don't like about commentary, and sort of again tailoring my style to it. But it does give me an appreciation for it, because commentary is not easy. It is something that takes a lot of work. It is not something I think there is maybe this notion that anybody can get behind a microphone and do it. And while that may be true to an extent, it takes so much work to get good at it. I think I still don't think I'm good at it. Who knows if I ever will be, but I try. And, I've been doing this for 3 years. I had no commentary experience before this. I was scared to death doing my first Nova show. But thankfully I had great partners along the way to help me out. But when I'm watching matches and that I'm not a part of, I definitely listen to the commentary, I think, more intently and do have a greater appreciation for it overall.
Yeah, I think it's changed it in two different ways for me. I definitely listen to commentary more. I, much like Kevin, am trying to listen to things that I want to pick up on. I hear bad habits, and then I recognize them in myself and realize what I want to not do. I mean, I think that's one of the hardest things, is when you have not realized you have created a bad habit for yourself, and then you become aware of it. You have to try and work very hard to not get stiff as you start to change what that bad habit was. And it definitely is a situation now where I'm watching a wrestling show. The quality of the commentary drastically affects my enjoyment of the show now, and I have found that rough commentary gets me a lot more turned off than it used to. I also think, though, what's been cool is watching matches live now. When I just go to a show and I'm sitting in the arena, I'm thinking a lot more about the story that's being told and the strategies, and it provides a different perspective as an audience member. And sometimes you do just want to lose yourself, and you can, but it really does become a great opportunity to be thinking about, can I look ahead and see some of these plot points? Can I see, by watching this match that I'm not calling, where I think some of these moments are going? Am I able to follow the structure? Have I picked up the breadcrumbs? Oh, good, I have, or I haven't, so that when I watch it, when I'm doing it for the job, I can train my brain to be ready to see those stories in a less pressure situation, so that I'm ready for it when the microphone is on. Because I think Kevin's completely right. It's not just about being funny or witty or smart. It's about really being able to tie and weave these things together to be able to put over not only what the promoter needs, but the wrestler needs, and most importantly, what the match needs, because that's the story that's being told. And I'm a huge fan of physicality as performance and storytelling. And Flying V, which is the theater company I run, we've done 3 different shows called Flying V Fights, which was all shows built on vignettes of different kinds of stage combat. And what I learned working on that was that pro wrestling had been one of the best teachers that I could have ever asked for to work in that style. By watching and studying pro wrestling for years, I had been spending my entire life being ready to help other people use physicality and violence to tell complex, nuanced stories without words. And that's something that wrestlers do. So we just have to be able to provide the right words to all the nuanced storytelling that they are doing. And that's not as simple as being clever.
Jason, I got a question for you. So going back to Fury Pro Wrestling, they had their debut show a couple of months ago. You did have, and I would assume this would have been your first time you guys had worked as a team. I can't think of her name right now.
Sampson.
Yes.
Yeah.
Could you speak about that experience of working with a new partner, the preparation it took, and also too, I mean, it was the debut show. You, I obviously was working there with you as well, not on commentary, but I did see you around preparing your notes and stuff for the show. But I mean, I want to know what was your whole mental process coming into that venue, meeting new staff, seeing some wrestlers you may not have been acquainted with before, and then having a new commentary partner, knowing that you was getting ready to be the lead on the debut show.
Well, that's one of the things that was different also. I would say at Nova Pro, my role is largely, for the most part, especially when I'm working with Kevin or Isaiah, on color, but it has been one that's switched back and forth. I don't think we have quite set roles, but in that Fury Pro show, I was definitely coming in as the lead. working with Mike, the promoter, as we had on Fight Pro Wrestling, I was very in the know about where he wants things to go and what his philosophy is. He had also been my broadcast partner at Fight Pro Wrestling the entire time, so it was him and I. I knew especially that Missy was coming in to really provide the wrestler's perspective, and that she was there as someone who knew a lot of the talent personally, had ring stories, road stories, and the perspective of being a wrestler, that my job was to help set the overall structure of the promotion, to help set the tone of the kind of stories that were going to be told, to help provide the narrative focus of it, and to tee her off in an appropriate way to be able to get that kind of analysis in, since it was one of her first times doing commentary. There's 8 million things I wish that we could have done differently because, like Kevin said, we're very self-critical people, and I constantly am thinking of how to make it better. And there's an explanation, or not a, and there's a saying in theater: you work with someone the first time to get to work with them a second time. I think we did a really solid job, but in working together, I now feel like we will do a much better job the second time because I have a better sense of her rhythm. I have a better sense of the way she likes to interject things. I think that's one of the things that most you have to learn doing commentary. I mean, it's a thing that we're naturally doing now, but in a much more structured environment, is learning how to breathe with your partner, to be able to sort of non-verbally communicate, I'm going to take something here, or let them go, or figuring out how to break up the appropriate time to call the pin, the pin attempt and stuff like that. So with Fury, it was different because it was live commentary being done from a different room on a monitor. So it was a first-time experience that I'd ever done live commentary to tape with a new partner, but from one steady cam perspective. So the thing I was most nervous about going in was actually whether or not I would be able to see all of the action clearly enough to be able to call the nuance and those specific moments. And so I had to kind of early decide the focus of today's commentary was not going to be about hitting as much the specific technique points that we might hit, but focusing on those broader story points, so that way if I was missing the specifics of some action because of the view, it wouldn't suddenly sound like I stopped knowing what I was talking about. And that was an early decision that I had to make in that circumstance.
Right on. I do have a couple of listener questions for the two of you guys. One being, and kind of on the note of what Jason just said, has there been any shows where you've messed up on commentary that vaguely sticks out in your head?
Yeah, at the Fury Pro show, there was a late addition to the card. Someone got injured the day before, and a different wrestler was put on the card in their place, and I didn't have time to do the research that I wanted to do about this person because I literally found out that they were on the show that day. They were in this match, and I'd heard about them before, and so without really thinking about it, I referred to them as a veteran, at which point Missy immediately goes, "Veteran? They've only been here 2 years," and completely buried me. And I was like, I just had to roll with it. I was like, internally, I was like, really? Come on. But externally, I was like, okay, well, this helps establish our dynamic and what we're going to be. So now I'm going to lean into this. And I was just said something like, apparently your sources are much better than mine, Missy. And like now suddenly I was slightly more bumbling, not intensely, but that was definitely the number one moment that I can think of where I was like, thank you for calling me out explicitly on commentary about a thing that I was wrong about. Can't wait to listen to that match pack.
I don't have anything like that in particular.
Thanks, Kevin.
Oh, you're welcome. No, I mean my commentary work is totally flawless. The answer is no. Moving on. No, I mean I can't. There's definitely nothing that I feel like there was a major mess up because I feel like if I don't know something with certainty, I just don't mention it or hope either my partner does, or if it doesn't get mentioned, it doesn't get mentioned. Maybe next time. But yeah, there was definitely times where I was, so nervous on the first Nova show, I would freeze. Even when I did the first Powerbomb stream I actually went up to Philadelphia and did a Powerbomb show with Leonard F. Carson. And there was times where just being in a new environment, and it was actually an exact same situation that Jason had at Fury Pro. It was at the Chikara Wrestle Factory, and they don't have the commentary booth in with all the fans. It's in a hallway in the arena. And it's very nerve-wracking because it's first of all, you're not feeding off the energy of the crowd because you're only hearing it through the headsets. But B, here I am sitting next to Joe Sposto, one of my favorite commentators ever. But there's also 4 or 5 other people in the room who are kind of listening to what you're doing, so you feel more aware of the people around you listening, and it just causes you to sort of get a little more nervous and freeze up. But those 2 instances where I could feel the nerves and felt like so many people were like specifically listening on me, where they probably weren't even paying any attention to what I was doing. That's really the 2 moments I can think of where I probably had some slip ups just from nerves and not being able. The synapses weren't firing as much as they are when I'm more comfortable in my own element, Nova.
And now that you speak about nerves, let's talk about the first time you've ever called commentary. Now you talked about it a little bit already, but. Yeah. I mean, what is the mental preparation, or how nervous were you when you do know that you have to go into that arena, that venue, to do a job that you've never done? The unknown, just the unknown factor. Yeah. What's the all around feels there?
Well, so that's the thing. You say the unknown, and it's not just the job you didn't do, but you don't know the feeling of sitting at a desk with a microphone watching it. You just don't know what that feels like. Or you don't get the rhythm of a match, when to talk, when not to talk, when to not step on your partner's toes so you guys don't talk over each other. And at that point, I think it was MLJ who did the first show with me. I didn't do every match on our first show because I was new, but it was definitely a good and I also felt a little less pressure knowing this is also Nova's first event. So I didn't want to necessarily screw up, but nobody had seen Nova before. So there was a little bit of that pressure off, where it wasn't like I was coming into a well-established company where expectations were already set. So I kind of kept reminding myself of that. And I let my partner kind of lead the way, and I sort of followed in their footsteps. And I did that for enough shows until I finally kind of understood what it was like to lead. And then I really, not even by choice, I just sort of became the lead commentator with all the changes and stuff in the booth. But yeah, it's just getting used to it. It's one thing where you can think about it and practice in your own home all day long, but until you're there and actually doing it, you just need to have that experience under your belt. And yeah, you just got to try to perform and not get stuck and not freeze up.
I had the benefit for the first time, like I said, my first several sessions of commentary were post-production commentary. So, if there was a moment that I felt really bad about, it was not live, pal. It was the ability to stop it and go back and actually do it from the beginning, which for that first day we did. There was one time when I was like, hey, I really don't like the work that I just did. Can we please go back and do it? The mics were less intimidating for me because I had a 4-year career in radio. So I was used to being an on-air DJ and talking about that and doing my own radio show and being a personality, as well as all of my work with Flying V. In a lot of ways as artistic director, I'm the face of that company. I'm the promoter. I'm kind of the ring announcer of a lot of our events in a weird way. So there was a degree of comfort just with being able to use my voice to speak extemporaneously and to use public speaking. But every new experience is a little bit different. So I had done the first couple sessions in that sort of very post-produced thing. And I remember listening to the first round of commentary and just hating myself. Just, there was a match in a tournament between Brutal Bob Evans and I think Robbie Page. And I thought I was doing so good providing backstory and context. And I listened to the match and I was like, oh, I failed. I didn't do anything to support what they were doing in the ring. I spent all this time talking about the context and the strategy, and I walked all over the match, and I was really unhappy with myself. So I think listening to what you do and is so important. It's not about just doing it. It's about listening and actually taking the notes and learning. Kevin was there the first day. I think I turned to him and was like, I think that was actually pretty good. And it was a while in. I'd been doing it, but it takes a while before you're even like, I think I'm okay. And I remember the first time that we did a live Powerbomb broadcast, it was a different feeling to me. It's one thing to do it live in the arena for tape, but knowing that I'd be able to get instant feedback potentially by people providing it. And now that's what I love more than anything. Like, I love doing it all the time, but oh man, if we could do it live on Powerbomb every single time, there's nothing like it. It's just a completely different energy. It's a different kind of rock and roll. I think we both feel that way. I know that I feel like when Kevin and I sit down there and it's real live, there's just a different gear that we want to turn it on for.
It's pressure, but it's a good kind of pressure. because people are listening in, and you're getting that immediate feedback from Twitter or other social media. Where is if it's on an MP4 or DVD or what have you, you may get some feedback later, but ultimately it's the live shows that I think people are more scrutinous about commentary and such, if they're not just outright ignoring it.
Yeah. So a question coming from Will, who couldn't make it to the show tonight. He's getting ready to go on the road for travel, as all of us are out, obviously. Nobody knows that, but yeah, we're all getting ready to get out of town soon. But he wanted to know what was personally some of y'all favorite or your favorite moment at Nova Pro. Now he said it doesn't necessarily have to be your best moment but their favorite moment for any particular reason.
First thing that immediately came to mind was Angelus Lane throwing a fireball in Mikey King's face, because how could you not love that? But that's one of those moments where, there's so many great matches in Nova Pro history, but there's only one time where someone threw a fireball in somebody's face. So it sticks out in your head so much. And I know this is a little moment, but I believe Cool for the Summer, the show with Keith Lee versus Angelus Lane that we talked about earlier, I believe that was the first Nova Pro sellout. So to look at the crowd and see every chair filled, and Brian Hughes, the ring announcer, announced "We are sold out," it gave me goosebumps. It gave me chills. And I mentioned this on Twitter too, but I started watching wrestling back in WWF in 1994 when the Quebecers were the WWF Tag Team Champions. So seeing PCO, who was one half of the champions when I started wrestling, come out to the ring to fight Nick Gage was just such a surreal moment in my life. I never thought I would call a Nick Gage match, let alone a Pierre Carl Ouellette match in my life. And I could say that for so many wrestlers who have come through Nova Pro. But I think, and honestly, like even doing those second and third events, the Kings had talked about putting on an event for years before the first Nova Pro came to fruition. And honestly, with the night of that first show, there was no telling if there was going to be a second, a third, let alone a 25th or 30th or whatever we're at in Nova Pro. We're about to celebrate our 3rd-year anniversary in September, which is so crazy to me. So even just those early days when the show was over and you could just say, like, we really did it. We ran a show in Northern Virginia and brought wrestling to this audience who has just been starved for this for so long was just so invigorating. And it's something that we've kind of continued to do. And I know it's easy to take for granted now that we're running monthly, but it is such a special thing that we were able to bring an indie wrestling company to an area that had none or just didn't have any good wrestling for so many years, to bring it there and have, regulars like you guys come every single month and just support and cheer and be so great. It sounds a little cliche, but honestly, every show feels so good because of it. Like, I can't believe we're actually doing this again. It's like we're getting away with something. So yeah, but those are the moments that stick out in my head, I think, not to drag this out too long. What about you, Jason?
The opportunity to call an NWA World Heavyweight Championship match is something that I will treasure forever. I don't think I knew how much it would sort of mean to me until it was actually something that was put on the table. And not only just because of how cool that is and to be able to be like, we did that, but to watch Isaiah in particular put on that kind of match with someone with the experience of Nick Aldis and really sort of watch a young guy who I don't know very well, but I've had the opportunity to really sort of watch the evolution of his career in the time that I've been there and see him develop and sort of become a future star in one night and put so many things together and hang with Nick Aldis. I just thought that whole experience was great. As far as shows go, I really did think the second night of the Commonwealth Cup this year was top to bottom one of the best wrestling shows that I've ever seen or been a part of. I was so proud of that show from beginning to end, the variety of the matches. On a personal level, probably two of my favorite moments was during the second day show, the women's show of the Commonwealth Cup, where during a match, Angelus interfered and she was doing some really dastardly things. And Dennis is a huge proponent of Angelus Lane, so he was just going off on how great she was, and it just really provoked some real honest emotion for me about just yelling to Angelus from the commentary table, "What are you doing? You can't do this. You're ruining it." And her just
I was next to you. That was awesome.
Yeah, and just her turning to me and just going, "S my D, Jason." It was the first time where I was like, I'm in this show. You know what I mean? Like, I'm part of this family. I know this person now, that they are comfortable, whatever. It was just like, oh, I'm a real character in this show, and I have a perspective, and I have a relationship with another character in the show. I now feel a total different level of like who Jason Heat in Nova Pro can be. On a similar level, I just remember the night that it looked like Sage Phillips had won the PWI Ultra J Championship from Logan LaRoe, and I thought that we did a really great job calling that match. That was I think that was the time when I turned to Kevin and was like, I think we did good. And then we were quoted in the newspaper article that came out, actually like lines from We Said, and that was really, really validating. And on a ridiculous level, we're all kind of used to it now, but the first time Donst came out to the safety dance, I lost it. The greatest moment of ever. So like now it's like a thing, but when it was not a thing and it just happened, I'm pretty sure I stood up and just started like cheering at the desk. I did not know that was happening.
Something that you tapped into reminded me of two memories, because you mentioned Isaiah Frazier getting the challenge for the NWA World Title. It's almost like watching your kids grow up. Some of the wrestlers who come in who are so new to wrestling and are still coming to this area. Sage Phillips is a great example. You talked about the PWI Ultra J Championship, but even just a couple months ago, seeing him hang with Jonathan Gresham in the ring was so rewarding, and seeing that to me like put a pin in how far that guy has come. Because if you look back at some of Sage's first matches in Nova Pro, they were not nearly as polished as he is today. Yes. Even with the knee injury, putting him on a setback for so long, Sage is so unbelievably good. And to see him go from somebody who wasn't even supposed to be on a show and got the pre-show match with Ken Dixon to being in the Commonwealth Cup and having, these great moments with Logan and having the show-stealing performance with Gresham, it does make you feel like a proud parent seeing him come from so far, especially because he comes from a Billy Rock school, and I'm so close with a lot of those people. But I remember a reaction I did not expect was at our 11th Dimension, the Black Friday show. We had the Women's Survivor Series match in the main event, which was cool because the first Nova show had one female on it, and that one match had 10 women in it. So I think it's great that Mike King has made it a concerted effort to bring so much great women's wrestling Nova. But Alley Cat being the sole survivor, I was calling the match, and I felt a lump in my throat and tears get into my eyes, and I was like, I wasn't expecting to have this reaction. But if you go back and listen, I talk about how Alley Cat went from someone who was on the Nova tryout show, who nobody knew existed before she came there, and just a few months later, she was a fan favorite and the sole survivor in the main event of our Black Friday show, and how proud I was of her for getting to that point. That was all very real, very genuine emotion, and I did not expect to feel that emotionally about it. That isn't what I knew I was going to call for that match, but I genuinely really felt it in that moment, and it's something that I was not expecting, but it was such a great thing to feel.
I literally a zillion percent agree with you on that. Literally my same exact thoughts. And Isaiah Frazier, one thing I want to add to that too is being around Nova family and coming to the show early and helping do the pre-show and everything is a humble moment for us. I know that has to be one of my memories is when we first started that pre-show. Jamal looked over at me and said, "Wow, we're live! Like, we're able to do this." And we went from being fans, and Mike gave us the task to do it. And ever since then, we just been doing it. But it's a surreal thing to be not part of just the culture of Nova Pro, but to be part of that family. But Isaiah Frazier, I always will recall him coming into Nova Pro, and when the Crab family comes in there, he, obviously they was helping put up the ring, but he beelines over and make sure he introduces himself to everyone before he gets to the task of putting up the ring, which, that's time critical, but he makes sure that he speaks to each and every person that's in the building. And then to see him go against Nick Aldis in that match, now we did have him on for an interview and, we generated a lot of talk and background on it, but to see him literally go and hang toe to toe with Nick Aldis literally was like, I literally felt so proud like you said, that once he came out, I didn't even know what to say to him. So I just went up and gave him a hug. And I was like, I hope this isn't weird, but like, I just don't know what to say, dude. Like, you killed that. Like,
and that place went crazy for him. I mean, he was a star in his next match. That reaction stayed. Like, it made a real impression. It was just a really cool moment. And it was just such an honor to call that for him and for that belt, which is really experiencing a resurgence that I certainly think that, 10 years ago, I never thought was going to happen.
Yeah,
not at all. Well, and that's the beauty of independent pro wrestling. I mean, you can watch an NWA title match with Nick Aldis and Isaiah Frazier. You can go tell Nick Aldis to his face how much you like that match and take a picture holding the title belt with him right after it. You could give Isaiah Frazier a hug because you were so proud of him and liked the match so much.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of independent professional wrestling.
Yeah.
I think there's it's a form of escapism like television or books or movies like that, but you can't reach out and high five a character in a movie, right? You can slap hands though with a wrestler, and that I think is why it's such a unique experience and why so many people are drawn to it and why they have so much fun doing it. That's the biggest difference from something even like WWE or something like that. You can't go backstage and tell Seth Rollins he had a killer match after the fact, but you can with Nick Aldis and Isaiah Frazier after the NWA title match.
If you work hard enough, you can get Nick Gage to hurt you.
That's right.
If you do enough, it's all possible. Homicide's right there. Test your luck, man.
I gotta give you guys your props. I mean, thinking about all this too makes me think like how hard of a job it is to take. I mean, obviously your emotions are going to flow through your vocal cords, but at some points, I mean, I could imagine myself unable to sit down in my seat anymore from the excitement and just be so invested in what just happened. I almost forgot that I was supposed to be calling commentary. Like, I couldn't even gather the fact of having that task, considering especially like you said, the 11th Dimension show. That was absolutely amazing. Angela Lane being the biggest heel in Nova Pro, getting a standing ovation at the end of that match. Like, I couldn't imagine having to say anything but to sit there and clap. So that definitely props to you guys for being able to do this on a monthly basis for Nova Pro.
We love it. I mean, that's what it all boils down to. This is a labor of love for us, and it's something where I know. I had no commentary experience for doing Nova Pro. Mike King came to me and said, "I want you to do commentary for us." He had no reason to. Again, I had no experience. He took a chance on me. And he was patient with me. He gave me the space to grow. And for that, I will forever be grateful. And it is something that I really, truly enjoy doing and do not take for granted that he didn't have to put me in that booth at any point in this period. Because, again, I had no experience. There was far better people that he was well connected to that he could have given the spot. But he wanted to give it to me. He had faith in me. He appreciated that I was local to the area, and thus I cared more about the development of Nova Pro than somebody who he could have maybe brought in from outside the area. And it's something that I still enjoy to this day. I can't imagine not enjoying it. And I think that's something I always keep in the back of my mind is just I'm so grateful to be a part of this independent wrestling thing. And it's awesome. It's just really awesome to be a part of it.
And not to extend Kevin's ego further than it already is, because we always fear doing that. But I mean, I feel very similarly both to Mike, but also to Kevin. I had been doing work with Fight, but really wanted to be doing more. I came to see a bunch of Nova Pro shows just because I wanted to mention to Kevin that I did commentary, helped out with some sound, which is just a really good piece of advice for anyone who wants to potentially break into wrestling. Have other things that you're able to do to help out, because I'm 100% sure that's part of a huge reason why I got invited. But like the opportunity and to be continued to be invited back and to get some mentoring in this and to really find a voice in this group has been phenomenal. And like Kevin really working with him and watching him has taught me a tremendous amount of doing it. And I really appreciate the platform that Nova Pro has offered and continues to offer me. That weekend of Commonwealth Cup where Nova Pro and Fury ran the same weekend and I did 4 shows in 3 days is one of my favorite weekends of all time. You know what I mean? That was the most fun. I wish every weekend would be like that.
So, speaking of Nova Pro, we're, a week and a half away from their next show, the 28th of July. first time. A new venue for Nova Pro. I've not been to this venue before, but it's 8421 Arlington Boulevard in Fairfax, Virginia. It's Harlem Nights. Doors open at 7, bell times at 7:30. Most of the front row is gone. So if you don't have tickets, don't know what you're waiting for, but it's $25 for the first row. General admission is $20, and check out their Twitter at VA Wrestling for more details. What are you guys looking forward to in this upcoming show, or is it just whatever happens, happens?
Oh, there's definitely specific things. I can think of 3 for me right now that I'm most looking forward to.
I know you're gonna steal mine, but just go for it.
He's gonna steal all of ours for sure.
Well, all right. Well, actually, I'll go with one that I think maybe is not as much. I'm really excited. Logan and Yuta is one of the ones that I'm really excited for. The 2 Commonwealth Cup champions. Wheeler Yuta is finding his place in Nova Pro. It's been an interesting journey for him to become a main event talent, and it hasn't been the smoothest thing, especially with the stuff going on with Homicide. This is a real opportunity for him to prove himself against the person that I think is the backbone of Nova Pro. You can make a case that other people are the heart, the soul, the future, the gatekeeper, whatever you want, but I think that whatever you think about him, Logan Easton LaRoe is the backbone of the company. And so what an incredible test. I can't wait to see Tim Thatcher live. Like, that's going to be a thing. And there's alcohol and Nick Gage and Tim Johnston. They're doing someone's going to die.
There's mine. Well, there's mine. I'll just stop with you at the alcohol and Nick Gage part. But
I mean, does Mike King not want to return to that building? I mean, I don't know what he's thinking.
He's ruined one building that we should not speak of, but
yeah, we will not speak of that.
Okay, off the air. I don't know this story.
we'll talk later.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, no, everything you said, I think Yuta and Logan's kind of fallen under the radar. They stole the show back in February at the season premiere for Nova this year. But that was a whole different game then. Now both of them are Commonwealth Cup champions, and I expect them to have an even better outing this time, especially now that Logan's associated with Stokely Hathaway sort of out of nowhere. So that adds a completely different dynamic to both performers coming into this contest. The thing I like about Nova Pro is it gives so many young people opportunities they might not get elsewhere. And I think we're getting that in 2 matches in particular. One is Harlow O'Hara getting to face Mia Yim. I mean, we all know how much Nova Pro means to Mia Yim as somebody who grew up in the area, went to school in the area, all that, learned to wrestle in Virginia. John Kerman was one of her trainers back in the day. She gets to wrestle in front of her parents when she's here. So being a Nova Pro means a great deal to her. I think it's great for Harlow O'Hara, who just made her Nova Pro debut 4 months ago, now gets to be in there with somebody who was in WWE's Mae Young Classic last year. That's just awesome to me. And the match that I didn't know about till it got announced on Twitter was Fred Yehi versus Sage Phillips.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to be really good. I mean, those 2 guys just have complementary styles. Like I said, Sage has improved so much in the 2 years he's been here. And if him and Jonathan Gresham's any indication, him and Fred Yehi is another match that has show-stealing potential. It's a really, I mean, we're coming to this new building all guns blazing. We're putting on, I think, a really awesome looking show at our first time there at the Elks Lodge.
Yeah, so you definitely want to get your tickets now, as they are definitely selling out. Are they reported earlier on the Twitter machine that 70% of the front row is gone? So yeah, the front row may not be there tomorrow.
And I will tell you, this is not going to be on Powerbomb TV. So the only way you can see this live is to be there at the building. Maybe future events, if it all goes well, will be at Powerbomb TV. We just don't know how the internet connection is at the building. And I mean, I don't know how long you guys have been indie wrestling fans, but I remember the Halcyon days of iPay-per-view was just internet outage disaster after disaster. So if you're not certain you can run a show there without any interruptions, we're not even going to bother. So if you want to see it live, we're just going to put on the best damn show we can for the people in the building that night, like we always do. So if you want to see it live, got to come out to Elks Lodge on July 28th.
I just wanted to go back to one thing, because I said Thatcher, but it's not just Thatcher. It's specifically Thatcher against Gresham.
And before you steal my point, because I'm going to cut you off, the last time Gresham faced someone that was significantly taller than him in Donovan Dijak happens to be within my top 5 of matches at Nova Pro. So I'm expecting this match easily. I mean, it's Gresham alone. Gresham versus a ghost. Gresham versus Gresham. Gresham just standing there is automatically going to be great.
Yeah,
but the fact that his stature,
Gresham is special.
He's
Gresham is special. Yehai is special. I mean, there's a lot of tremendous talent at Nova Pro, but there's also like just a core handful of this sort of workhorse, modern hybrid style guys in Nova Pro that make a routine appearance. It's Gresham and Williams and Yehai and Logan that just sort of form this sort of backbone, I think. Yeah. And Gresham versus Thatcher has the potential to just be something incredibly different.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, personally, that's my favorite style of wrestling. The Lance Storms, the Dean Malenkos, the Benoits, and now it's the Greshams, the Fred Yehais, the Sage Phillips, Logan. And so, that's going to be nuts. It's actually the match that I'm looking forward to the most, aside from Jordan Grace versus Rain.
You have good taste, Jamal.
Thank you. I think so. But yeah, but Jordan Grace can really do no wrong. And with Rain coming in for, I think this is her debut.
Second. She went up again.
Second.
Angeles.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's going to be nuts. And then obviously they're giving Rain some stiff competition in Nova Pro. So Rain versus Jordan Grace is definitely worth the price of admission. And you get Fred Yehai versus Sage Phillips, which honestly should steal the show. That's the one that's the one that people are going to sleep on, because Sage Phillips has been slowly climbing the ladder, and he's really on the rise. And he's the anti-Logan. Like, both of them technically sound very proficient, but as far as their styles, their personas, it's almost night and day. So it's going to be very interesting to see those two meet down the road, because they have to. But for right now, Yehai versus Sage Phillips is my match of the night. So
anti-Logan is about the best compliment you can give somebody.
I don't know, man. I'm on Team Fiji.
Can we hang up on Jason? Is that a possibility for the?
I think Logan's something special. It's like X-Pac during the invasion. He might be a D-bag, but he's our D-bag, and we need to own it. We need to try and change him from the inside. You can't make him into something different by constantly turning him off, Kevin. We have to find a way to get him to embrace being the champion of Nova Pro beyond just the champion of the 1%. And you constantly berating him is turning him further and further to the dark side of the Force. He's with Stokely now. We have to work together, Kevin.
Get Logan to come out to Uncle Cracker like X-Pac during the invasion, and we'll talk.
I have to, you don't realize the level to which Uncle Cracker is not only my least favorite musical artist of all time, but I've literally run out of buildings when his songs have been on the radio. It is the most offensive sound to my ear of anything has ever happened. No hyperbole, total shoot. I have run out of buildings when Follow Me comes on.
Bet you didn't think that conversation was going to happen on this podcast.
No, really didn't.
I will say this: the core nucleus and heart of the Nova Pro roster, Nova Pro is going to be safe and run excellent shows for years to come. The talent and just to see them grow, and then you still got the tail end of the crab people still coming into their own. I mean, things are bright in Northern Virginia right now.
Yeah, and that's something else that I think we're very mindful of, is that it's great to bring in your stars like Timothy Thatcher and Rain and so on and so forth, but they're not people who just for distance or popularity or whatever else aren't going to be able to be there every month. So it is incredibly important to have those people who are local to your area, who you can depend on to be there month after month, to make them the nucleus of Nova Pro. And so it's great to have outside talent come in to spice up a card, change up the cards, draw some people who may be new to there. But I think, again, it is I think of the utmost importance to keep the focus and the nucleus, as you say, on those people. And I think Nova's doing a pretty good job at a balancing act between that.
And I would say I don't have any knowledge really of where things are going in the future. So this is genuinely me as a fan saying this. A match that I would love to see in the future is Jordan versus Logan. You were talking about anti-Logans, and I think Sage is a great example of that. I think Eric has been a great example of that. But if you're thinking about a great antagonist and a great protagonist, putting Jordan against Logan in some meaningful capacity, I think that's a totally different dynamic, but a huge antagonist and a great protagonist that people can get behind.
My God, I never thought of that. Whoa. Whoa.
I have thought of that, but to be fair, Jordan Grace is a woman of substance, and I think that she would be better in the gated community, surrounded by a gated community, surrounded by yet another gated community, than fighting against it. I think that she's a smart woman, and when the Fiji water comes in, Jordan Grace knows where she needs to go. Now, the question is what Mr. Gresham thinks about that, but that's a different story for a different day. With that said, to your point, Kevin, I do believe that the role of Sanjay Dutt in Nova Pro is it kind of is a better example of what you're talking about, because Sanjay was there for every show. He was the backbone of the show, and now he's really hands off to now. We still miss him, and we definitely want him to come back, but it's like the kids are in good hands, and they can drive the bus now.
Yeah, I don't think it can be understated how important Sanjay Dutt was in the development of Nova Pro. I mean, he's somebody he grew up here. He went to Lake Braddock High School. He went to George Mason University. I know he's affiliated with Impact Wrestling, and he's an international star in so many ways, but he cares so much about Nova Pro because I think it is the place that he wished he had to wrestle when he was developing as a professional wrestler. Mm-hmm. And now as someone who is a tried and true veteran who's been wrestling for nearly 2 decades, to be there to just him being involved adds a level of prestige that I don't think can be understated. And I think he added legitimacy to when we were shopping around the concept to places like the JCC, trying to get our foot in the door. Sanjay was there to help. So I think when we say he is the godfather of Nova Pro, that's just not a very cute nickname. It is very true. He means so much to us. Obviously, he's on the mend from getting better from his leg, and he has a lot of duties in wrestling that he must involve himself with. But I know that getting him back to Nova Pro is a priority for both himself and us. And I think it's a matter of just when it's going to happen than if. And I'm glad you gave him a shout out because I truly think Sanjay is a great person. I think his contribution to Nova Pro cannot be understated.
Absolutely. So you definitely want to be in the building not this Saturday. I wish it was this Saturday. It's Saturday, July 28th at the Elks Lodge of Arlington, Fairfax, 8421 Arlington Boulevard in Fairfax, Virginia. 7 o'clock, the doors open. Bell time is 7:30. Get your front row tickets now, $25. 70% are gone. So if you want to sit in the front row, do it now.
And you do.
You absolutely want to sit in the front row.
Yeah, until
general admission is $20.
Until Nick Gage throws Timothy Dunce at you, and then your front row is no longer there. So
I mean, to be fair, Eric Royal has been known to obliterate several sections of the JCC.
Yeah, and then there's
but you definitely want to be in the front row.
Before we wrap the show up, it would be foolish not to again give the Kings a shout out for believing in people and giving people chances. I think we spoke a lot about Nova Pro and everything, but I think we religiously kept getting back to the fact of they were giving us a chance. They gave you guys a chance. They gave young talent a chance that now pretty much everyone has found a home and found a purpose to be part of something that's really special right here in our backyard. So definitely want to give a shout out to them for believing in people and giving them chances.
Definitely. And something I want to say, and I don't know how you guys necessarily feel, but I hope you understand how grateful we are for all the time and attention you've given to Nova Pro, and how you are an extension of the Nova Pro family in and of itself. And to anybody who's out there, the Snack Society, we appreciate them for bringing snacks to the Nova Pro locker room, for giving us shout outs on their shows. We appreciate Sean Neutron and all he does on his podcast. If you're a fan who's ever brought a sign to a show and maybe you don't get acknowledged and you think a wrestler didn't see it, it did get seen and it probably got a good chuckle out of us. So to say that we are so immensely thankful for anybody who chooses to put down their $20 or $25 and come spend a Friday or Saturday evening with us, we can't understate how appreciative we are of that. And that is the reason why Nova Pro has been able to last for nearly 3 years. So as somebody who has lived in Virginia since he was 5 years old, who never had a wrestling company like this, and is privileged to be there every month in the capacity that I am so grateful that the fans have kept Nova Pro alive and kicking, because it is as good as it is because of our awesome, awesome fans.
I don't even know how we're calling that one out. Thank you for sure. But yeah, that's as genuine as it gets right there. So yeah, before we get out of here, guys, and the information is in the description for anyone who may be listening live or will be listening to the podcast version of this. Plug your social medias and anything else you have going on that you want to plug.
Jason, you go first.
Sure. You can read the 1 or 2 things that I don't post about Nova Pro on Twitter at Jason Heat FV. In terms of that, it's mainly Nova Pro related stuff, and then like once a month I'll put something else. But please check out that. But even more important for me, in addition to my work with Nova Pro, I am the producing artistic director of Flying V. We are your friendly neighborhood indie theater with a focus on the intersection of intimate moments and high concept pop culture based theater. If you like Nova Pro Wrestling, we are the theater company for you. One of the big reasons that I love being at Nova Pro is I look at that audience and I see a very similar audience to the kind of work that we make. And you can check us out at Flying V Theater on Twitter, facebook.com/FlyingVTheater, or at flyingvtheater.com. We do a lot of really interesting physical movement-based work. We do a lot of stuff inspired by professional wrestling, comics, and other genre fiction. And so that's my other life's work, and I'd love for you to come check that out.
You can follow me on Twitter at KFord13. I don't tweet a lot, but if you tweet at me, I'll definitely respond. Also, if you happen to be listening to this and have never seen Nova Pro, I highly recommend going to powerbomb.tv and subscribing. You can use the code NovaPro to get 20 days for free, so there's absolutely no risk whatsoever. And not only is there Nova Pro, but there's other great promotions like Beyond Wrestling, the Scenic City Invitational, AIW, WXW. There's a smorgasbord of promotions up there.
Making Towns Classic.
Making Towns Classic, yes. 27 Nova Pro full events are on there for your watching pleasure. So go check it out if you haven't seen Nova Pro yet. And guys, I actually, if you will allow me to, for our next show after Harlem Nights, we have the Summer of George on August 24th, and I have an exclusive announcement for you if you would let me.
Ooh. Oh yeah, of course we're going to cut you off. This plan, give it.
So I mentioned we have Mia Yim coming up on July 28th, and she was in last year's Mae Young Classic in the WWE, but debuting on August 24th, we're going to have somebody from this year's Mae Young Classic. The Canadian Ninja Nicole Matthews will make her debut on August 24th. So check that out. Summer of George at the Annandale Volunteer Fire Department.
Wow.
Bam. There's your exclusive for you.
Well, I'll take it.
Got to bring the goods on the Big Gold Belt podcast.
Absolutely. We appreciate it. Hey, that'll be twice the same amount because I will be making my way down to the Mae Young Classic. So that's awesome. Appreciate it. Yeah. Well, yeah, this has definitely been one of my favorite shows. But we have hit our mark because I still have questions on the paper I haven't asked, but we have hit our mark. Guys, the door is open. We have to do this again.
Would love to. Absolutely.
100%.
And then we're going to just make it a party because we have to get Innocent Isaiah on here and we have to get Dennis on here. And it just makes sense that we just have a whole shindig all together with the voices of Nova Pro.
Dennis and Kevin a little bit separated. They don't always play well together. Just a little bit of space between the two of them.
He's not wrong.
Well, yeah. If we're going to do that, then we should just get Angelus and make it a party.
Well, considering that the last time you and Angelus was together, and then we just got the other story with Jason and Angelus, I don't know. She might burn this podcast down. So
you want a very X-rated podcast, and me and Angelus can make your request come true.
I think we need to make it happen. We haven't had Angelus on the show, so I mean that just makes sense to me.
We have not. So we got beef too. So bring it.
Yeah. Well, anyway, for everyone who gave questions, tuned in, tweets, and all that other good stuff, we definitely appreciate you guys listening. And for our guests tonight, that is Kevin Ford, Jason. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, you got all the information for Harlem Nights. Make sure you go over to Nova Pro's Twitter page at VA Wrestling. Give those guys a follow. Keep up with all the latest information and news with them. And also, step over to our website at Big Go Bell Group for all of our latest information and dates, and all of Nova Pro information as well there as well. So thanks for tuning in, and we will catch you guys next week.